This is a brief video on deep learning as part of our course B10 on Python for AI. This is just a basic introduction for beginners who are new to that area. So when we think about deep learning, it's a type of machine learning using artificial neural networks, NNs, with far more layers than a typical machine learning approach to allow for more complex patterns to be inferred. And therefore, if for the right data sets, this might be effective. If you have a simple data set, it's kind of a waste of time, really. So we have an input data set and then many hidden layers that provide some sort of output. We can use unlabeled or labeled data for this and requires GPU compute for this as well, and therefore takes a long time. And we've kind of set up here where the number of hidden layers across here is going to be very many. So with deep learning, one thing to consider is that we can use pre-trained modeled using related data, and that for image data that can be very useful. So what we're thinking about from this is that we're kind of skipping the feature extraction stage. We're allowing the different layers to implement that and now output results that are useful from this. So each neuron, so the analogy for these neural networks is the human mind. So each neuron takes in inputs, multiply them by the weights, add the bias to that, and pass them through a set of one of many options for activation functions. And then you can stack these layers up to get a deep network. So we have our analogy here of a human brain and a neuron and many layers within there. Um, and we can apply this to many different areas, voice recognition, image analysis. It's very powerful. It's more difficult for if we're trying to reveal biological mechanisms because the reasoning behind the model decisions maybe not be clear, and therefore we need a lot of data. So typically, unless we're using some sort of very effective pre-trained model, that is a key consideration. We can apply this in different ways. So for example, convolutional neural networks are good at image and spatial analysis. For example, here we might be able to classify these different cells into ones that are platelets, white blood cells, and red blood cells, and then progress from there to say classify white blood cells as macrophage or other cell types. There's approaches using pre-trained models that apply you only look once approach to an image where they simultaneously extract the different components of the image at the same time. So basically, it's that each aspect is independent of the other. We also have recurrent neural networks, which are useful for time series analysis, and also short-term memory networks, which use recurrent neural networks to infer long-range dependency in time series data, which can be effective in other instances as well. So activation functions are key to this to allow nonlinear effects. So our default for deep learning is a linear model, and what makes it deep is that we can allow more complex relationships between the features to be possible, including nonlinear ones, and there's several options for their use, such as ReLU, sigmoid, and softmax. We also have loss function, so looking at the mean squared error for regression, so that's taking our observed data point here and looking at the difference between that and our model one and getting this distance here between them and getting the sums of squares of those values and adding them up to extract the mean squared error from that, the MSE from that. We also have other approaches like cross entropy, and I guess our general goal is to minimize the loss during optimization between our predicted data and our actual observed data at the end. We also have backpropagation, and this is an algorithm which dictates how each weight contributes to the error and tries to tweak these weights to reduce them where possible. And Python libraries like PyTorch and TensorFlow can implement that. We also have optimizers, and they control how much and in which direction to adjust the weights at each step. Atom is a common one. SGD is another one as well. Dropout and regularization. So dropout randomly switches off neurons during training, preventing the network from memorizing the training data and thus overfitting to the training data. In Collab, what we'll do is we can change the runtime type to be a type 4 GPU, save that, and TensorFlow and PyTorch will detect it automatically. And this will mean that the training is much faster than a CPU. In reality, for our lab, we're not going to do that because the GPU will still take considerable amount of time and also will be a bit pointless to use it in that context um, when we're just at the learning stage. So we can just make a more simple data set and a simple model to get the same benefit from learning. So that kind of so I guess a question will be then, what is a person of the value activation function in the neural network? To normalize the inputs in the range 0 to 1, to calculate the loss between the predictions and targets, to introduce nonlinearity, allowing the network to learn complex patterns, or to randomly drop neurons during training to reduce overfitting. So if we think about this, the relative function is not involved in scaling or normalizing the data. It does not calculate the loss between the predictions and targets. It is not involved in dropping neurons during training to reduce overfitting, but it does allow nonlinearity. It's one of a number of activation functions that allow this. So that completes this small video on basic deep learning. Please see the next video on protein language models to learn more.